States to control the situation within its own country. Megha.
Ambassador Ajay Bisaria, who's the former Indian High Commissioner to Pakistan and to Canada, is also on the telecast with me. Thank you very much, Ambassador Bisaria, for joining me on the telecast. My first question, of course, about the Pakistani man who went to study in Canada, had been plotting a terror attack on the Jews in the United States and in India for the ISIS. How troubling is this development?
Well, it's certainly troubling, but it's also not very surprising because we've been seeing and saying for a while that Pakistan is the epicenter of terrorism. Multiple terrorism plots are hatched in Pakistan and by Pakistanis. There's a thriving ecosystem of terrorism, and it's an ecosystem which supports global terrorism. So terrorism is alive and well in Pakistan, and many of its citizens are involved in terrorism. So it doesn't come as a huge surprise.
Does extradition of the Pakistani national vindicate India as we are reaching out to the world seeking a unified fight against Pakistan's terrorism?
Absolutely. I think it certainly does vindicate what India has been saying for decades. And it also vindicates what India has said very recently. The 7 parliamentary delegations that went to 33 countries with 60 MPs were saying precisely this. And one of the messages that the delegations were giving, and India has been giving, is that terrorism is not just India's problem, it's also the world's problem. And what we saw recently, or what this episode tells us, is that there was a plan to attack people in New York City. So that would have been an attack if it had succeeded, which would have been a parallel of 9/11 or of 7th October. And this certainly does vindicate what India has been saying, that Pakistan is an epicenter of terrorism. They are universities of terrorism, which promote young people taking up careers in terrorism and spreading it across the world.
Now, Pakistan's obvious response is going to be that it has got nothing to do with this terrorist and ISIS, and it is Canada's problem. Do you see that as an argument that will augur well with the United States, and does that make China a safe haven for terrorists as well?
No, I think what it shows is that both Canada and the United States, which are part of the Five Eye intelligence sharing network, do understand the nature of the threat that comes from Pakistan. They are coordinating and cooperating at a very high level. Pakistan will obviously be in denial, but what the world and these two countries should investigate is whether this individual was also supported by any state agency of Pakistan. Because we know that Pakistan's state supports terrorists across the world as well. We've seen this in Khalistani activism being supported by the Pakistan ISI globally, whether it's in Canada, the US, or elsewhere. And we've seen multiple other kinds of terrorism being supported by the Pakistan state. And that is precisely what the investigation will look into and should look into. Whether this was just a lone wolf operative who was representing the ISIS, or was he a person with some connection to Pakistan's official agencies like the ISI, which may have used him as an asset for doing some of their dirty work.
Now, we have also raised this concern with Canada. A recent Khalistani rally had Pakistani flags being displayed. Now, Pakistani national has been found in the Canada plotting major terror attack. Since you have been India's High Commission to Canada as well, do you think Canada is also to blame for ignoring terrorism growing in its backyard?
Well, India's problem has been, and in its conversations with Canada, not just now, but for about more than 4 decades, is that Canada does end up giving too much space to extremism, to extremists. Canada's problem is that they say their freedom of speech rules are very accommodative, and therefore, unless there's strong evidence, they don't take action against these people. But what we as India have been trying to explain to our Canadian friends is that there are many individuals, anti-India people, rogue agencies, and their representatives like the ISI, which abuse this democratic freedom of expression and use this situation to promote terrorism of various kinds. And as you mentioned, we've seen a strong collusion between those advocating the case of Kashmir, for instance, and Khalistan. They all seem to get together. They all seem to have a common sponsor, and that could be the Pakistani state, which likes to use these assets globally. You know, it is part of their low-cost proxy warfare against India, and this is something India draws the attention of global partners to. It talks to various global agencies about this issue, and hopefully cases like this will vindicate what India has been saying, and have these agencies, look at this problem with a lot more attention and a lot more seriousness.
What should India's next diplomatic move to mount pressure on Pakistan, United States of America as well, for terror state funding after the recent outreach that has been made to 33 countries by our diplomats, by our members of parliament?
Well, we are in a phase of post-Pahalgam diplomacy. You saw that multiple parliamentary delegations had fanned out and spoke of this situation, the new normal that India is now setting up to deter terrorism. We also saw India's diplomats, the foreign minister, the foreign secretary go to major capitals and talk about it. The prime minister will be, next week in Canada. He'll be talking to his peers, the G7 nations and others, talking about this issue. So diplomacy is a slow process. We must understand that we won't get immediate results. It's not that you'll suddenly end all IMF support to Pakistan, or you'll one fine day have every country breaking relations with Pakistan. But what we need to do is steadily draw the attention of the world to this very serious problem emanating from Pakistan, and use all the levers like the FATF, the IMF, the global lending institutions, and the force of multilateral organizations to put pressure on Pakistan to get it to change its behavior on terrorism. And that's exactly what India is doing. What we must remember is that it's not something which will give us overnight results, but we should steadily keep sending the message to all our partners and friends.
Okay, but let's understand how Pakistan has acted against India in the last 76 years. Pakistan continues to push terror. The United Nations Security Council has cited procedure to make it chair of the counter-terror panels. What does it mean with regards to United Nations credibility in countering terror and holding terror states responsible when they need to be chastised and pulled up?
Well, I think you have to factor in the nature of the UN process. It is very procedure bound. It's terrible optics, I agree. We did and we should have argued that this is bad optics, giving an IMF loan to Pakistan on the 9th of May, or releasing a bunch of it, allowing Pakistan to chair or co-chair sanctions committee. But we all knew, Pakistan is a member of the United Nations. It does every decade or so get a non-permanent seat in the UN Security Council. The UN Security Council does have multiple committees, and Pakistan will, of course, get to chair some of them. So it's not such a big deal that Pakistan is part of that, but we should continue to draw the attention of the world at the irony of Pakistan chairing counterterrorism committees, and also make sure that it does not abuse that position to give itself a free pass in promoting terrorism. Well,
India has also made a massive push to globally define terror and the states that support it. Have we been able to manage in getting a consensus, global consensus on that?
I don't think we are, because this is a complex process. It's gone on for decades. The Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism is a document which has got stalled because of the definition of terrorism. And that is because countries like Pakistan don't want a common definition to come about, because it would throw up a lot of attention to them, because they would like to dress up terrorism as freedom struggles, and they would like to talk of root causes. So I think a lot of India's attention should go to working outside that system also, bilaterally, not just multilaterally, because multilateral processes can become bogged down in procedures. But what we should do is draw the attention of major powers, major countries in the world to the Pakistan problem, and explain to the world that it is not just India's problem; it can be the world's problems. We could have had a major terrorist attack in New York City if the agencies had not been alert enough to apprehend this man. And I think this is something which we need to also take up directly with Pakistan as a global community in order to get it to change its behavior.
All right. Thank you, Ambassador Ajay Bisaria, for joining me on the telecast and sharing your views on this very important subject. General Kocher back on the telecast with me. And General Kocher, quickly